These were nervous times in Australia. War was raging over the horizon. The Japanese had already marched through Singapore. As Koolama began her voyage north from Fremantle in 1942, she was heading into treacherous waters. Japanese planes were flying the northern skies. And with her cargo of war supplies, trucks and machinery to help build roads and airstrips, Koolama would surely be a target. Few regular passengers were making this trip. Most cabins were filled with army personnel and prisoners from Fremantle Jail on work release to help with the war effort. There was anxious talk aboard of Japanese attacks. Many were uneasy about a warning from Tokyo Rose, the propaganda broadcaster.
Tokyo Rose had said, "You were very lucky that we missed you with the submarine, but we'll get you next time. We'll look after you next time." And that, of course, could have been a foreboding worry to a lot of us that heard that, you know.
As Captain Eggleston steered his ship north, a dark cloud of uncertainty hung over the crew.
Arthur turned to me and said, "Tom, I've got a rotten feeling this ship's never going to sail back into this harbour." Now, it was a most un-Arthur sort of comment. It was excellent anticipation and timing on the captain's part.
Using the engines to give him more thrust to turn very sharply.
That line of bombs would have been in line with the ship. As it was, we went round and they cut across our stern.
Hang on, everyone!
When the bombs hit the water, the ship actually rose up and then seemed to stop for a second and then went forward, sort of thing.
Shook. Look, just like I said, just like a tiger shaking the living life out of a little mouse. It's terrible sensation.
One hit Bluey Plummer, you know, army bloke, on the side of the head and chiselled his brain just about.
The fin of the bomb apparently laid his face open, laid all the side of his face down onto his shoulder.
He never murmured. He never murmured, that boy.
Captain Eggleston's remarkable seamanship and timing had saved Koolama from the full force of the bombs. But the ship's stern had suffered 3 direct hits and was severely damaged.
The seam had opened like that, and water was just gushing through, and there were hundreds of popped rivet holes. What sort of a pressure can pop hundreds of 5/8 rivets?
And I walked to the back of the boat while we were out there and had a look, and all the back end of the boat was missing. The rudders and everything were gone, and all the steelwork was sticking out, and it was sort of hanging over the back. Just with the steel, there wasn't anything underneath it.
40 kilometres off the remote northwest coast, Captain Eggleston began a desperate race to reach shore before the Koolama sank. The danger had not ended with the attack. One bomb had passed through the swimming pool and lay unexploded in the ship's hold.
This fellow manhandled this bomb, put a sling around it, and lifted it up, swung it over to the starboard side, lowered it gently to within about 3 feet of the water, and we were doing about 10 knots when he pulled on the slippery hitch and the bomb went down to the bottom of the ocean.
We really didn't know what the captain was going to do with the boat, but we were heading for shore, so we imagined that he was going to beach it.
As the crippled ship approached the coast, the order to evacuate was given.
The captain put all the passengers in the lifeboats and they could make their way to shore with the chief officer, second officer and third officer in charge of them and responsible for their safety.
I think they felt very relieved when they got into the lifeboats, and the further we got away from the ship, I think the better everyone felt.
As Reynolds ferried the passengers and crew to shore, the captain beached Koolama. But there was already tension between Eggleston and his deck officers.
After he beached the ship, he seemed to lose the whole idea of the fact that he had 180 people to look after. His one interest was the ship.